Well, IU fans, let's face it, last week had a little bit of everything. Indiana had a pathetic performance at Penn State, but to their credit, they reversed course and breaking news, played hard. And guess what? It worked. They beat Wisconsin on Saturday. So, what do we make of that week? It was a little weird. It was a little crazy. And now Indiana has two massive games coming up. We're going to recap what just happened to this team. We're going to preview these two big games and so much more here on episode 279 of the Hoosier Sound, where we're the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Wednesday, January 18th, 2023, where I'm your host, Nithin Christian. Here with me tonight is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, it was ugly and disgusting and disgraceful at Penn State. Indiana figured out how to end the losing streak on Saturday. What's your biggest takeaway from the last two games that you saw with this team?
Okay, so funny story for all of you out there listening to the podcast. This is actually our second time recording this podcast. We
Yeah.
recorded this last night on Tuesday night, and one of our computers, either Nithin's or mine, decided to just not record it. So now here we are again on Wednesday night, recording it for all of you guys for a second time. So I will give this monologue a second time, which was that look, IU came out and was absolutely shambolic against Penn State. I told y'all last week, by the way, if you listened to the podcast, a lot of you did. I saw there was an increased viewership. By the way, thank you for that.
Yeah, there was.
Uh, I saw this coming. Like you guys go back and listen. You can't defend the three. Nobody can guard Jalen Pickett. And they shoot the ball really well and they run some really good stuff. And Shrewsbury's gonna end up a great coach somewhere else. True, all this ended up happening. I did not expect Indiana to literally be so lethargic that there were highlight tapes of Miller Kopp losing three-point shooters multiple times that night. I know I expected them to at least throw in a little bit of effort, so I was pissed going to those guys. I legit missed the first 5 minutes of the Wisconsin game because I was so
Distraught.
I didn't want to watch it. Like I was dreading watching Indiana basketball, like I'm sure the rest of you were.
Yeah.
And honestly, after the first, after the first 5 minutes, I watched the first half by myself, and I went, "This is the worst basketball I've ever seen." But we're somehow up 1 point. Like I'm trying to grasp at straws for how we're playing in that first half. I'm like, this is just terrible. Like I hate Wisconsin. I hate Big Ten refs. I hate the way we're playing. I'm debating why I even went to IU in the first place. And then the second half shows up and IU drops 40 points, holds Wisconsin to 40 themselves, total in the game. And played some of the best defense, honestly, some of the best basketball I'd seen them play all year, even though they only went 1 of 8 the entire game from three-point land. I thought they played fantastically well on the defensive end. They were very communicative. You could tell that they were working together. They had a presence inside. For the first time in a couple of games, teams were actually scared to drive on the inside, which on the last couple of games, you just seen straight line drives. I mean, they still had a couple straight line drives, but Trace Jackson Davis was there or Jordan Geronimo was there to kind of help clean up at the end of the day. So I'm very proud of how they responded with the Wisconsin game. I'm very proud of how they played in the second half. And so for me, I said this last recording, but obviously you guys didn't hear this, so I'll say
it's lost in cyberspace.
I know
now.
it's somewhere. There's Martians listening to it currently. But so, anyways, look, IU is in a holding pattern until they get Xavier Johnson and Race Thompson back. Because again, this team is completely different when everybody's healthy. They were on top of the world. They were a top 10 ranked team. They were taking it to Xavier, who by the way looks fantastic now, and taking it to UNC, and then they got hurt, right? And you ran into two really hard games that nobody blames them for, particularly, and then it's been downhill since then. So the team is in a bit of a holding pattern until they come back. So what they need to do is like on the Titanic, they need to grab themselves a life and hang on for dear life, okay? Because if they try to ride out the storm on the ship, they're going to go down with the ship. So they're going to have to figure out a way to get a couple wins here and kind of survive. Going up just below 500, going 500 until they get Race and Xavier back, and then kind of kick it into high gear. Like I think at this point, Indiana fans, you need to kind of retire the thoughts of a possible Big Ten title. You need to retire the thoughts of being a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. I don't think there's any shot in hell, especially with how strong the top half of the league is.
No shot
that IU is going to be there. I think the best that we can wish for is probably a 6th or 7th place finish in the Big Ten, and hopefully a little bit of run in the Big Ten tournament again, to kind of get ourselves out of possibly being in that final 4 or the last 4 in conversation, and more towards an 8 or 9 seed in the tournament, and then see how it goes from there. And again, they're going to have to find contributions from Jordan Geronimo. Saw CJ Gunn play a bit in the last couple of games. I'm assuming that's going to stay the same. I'm assuming a little bit less Miller Kopp. We'll get into all this as the show goes down.
Sure.
But basically, I think your expectations need to change, because this is not the same team. I know we talked about at the beginning of the year, we talked about how great their depth was. We talked about how great we thought they would all play together and how the pieces would work. And that's fine, but you're missing 2 of the 3 most important pieces right now. And honestly, it's good news that you're going to get both of them back eventually. But again, it's like, yes, it's on the coaching staff to make, kind of like a miracle worker, right? Like, and kind of piece things together. But you're asking them to piece things together. You're asking them to build a model, like a model plane, without being able to use any super glue and without being able to use tape, right? So
good luck.
Yeah, exactly. You have your glue guy in Race Thompson gone. You have your everything kind of sticks together.
Your duct tape,
your duct tape in
guy.
Xavier Johnson, right? And you're missing both of them. And so now you have a model plane that has no way to piece together, and you're having to balance things on top of each other in order to get them to work together. That's the best thing I can come up with for this team. We will go into more depth about how they can possibly do things better, how some of the lineups can change, how maybe getting some people some more shots, and maybe not telling reporters that a guy that should be getting more shots is getting enough shots is not a great idea. But again, like, I think take a step back. Expectations need to change. Yes, it's been really frustrating watching the team, but if they're going to start to give effort like they did against Wisconsin, you're going to have to live with them losing some games, just because, again, they're not as talented and they're not as well put together a team as they were in November.
No, that's totally fair. But the one thing that stood out to me from Saturday, I didn't even care what the result was, right? Yes. I didn't even care. It didn't matter to me. Indiana could have won. Indiana could have lost. But based on how they played for the 40 minutes against Wisconsin, that showed me that Indiana has that passionate, desperate, inspired level of play inside them. And that, to me, is what matters more than anything. Xavier Johnson and Race Thompson, yes, they're not there, and they won't be there for a while. It's going to take some time, I believe, was the quote from Mike Woodson. Indiana's not going to have those 2 guys for Illinois. They're not going to have those 2 guys for Michigan State. But they had the 8 or 9 guys that they played against Wisconsin who left it all out on the floor. Yeah. And that's what Indiana fans have been begging for so long. And
we haven't been asking for a lot, Nithin.
It's not been that complicated, man. It's basketball. Go out there, play for the name on the front of your jersey, and go hard for 40 minutes. And you saw every single person do that on Saturday. And let's face it, a lot of us are asking how much of that win over Wisconsin is sustainable. Because, yes, Indiana's 2 Big Ten wins are at home against Nebraska without Sam Griesel and against Wisconsin without Tyler Wall. Not that impressive. But what stood out to me is this. Indiana played their tails off, and the crowd helped. And Indiana, for one afternoon, played with that edge, that chip on their shoulder that we've desperately been wanting to see. And the question now is, what happens in the next 2 games here when they get hit with some adversity? That's the missing piece. When Indiana gets knocked down, do they get back up? Wisconsin didn't knock them down. Indiana was a wire-to-wire winner on Saturday. They didn't knock Indiana down. Thursday, Illinois is going to knock you down. And Sunday,
Yep.
Michigan State's going to go on a run at some point. That's what we need to see. That's the
Will
next
they,
step
though?
for this team.
Will Michigan
We'll
State
see.
go on a run?
Maybe let's talk about Illinois first. Let's
Okay.
talk about Illinois first. You know, it's a good question, actually. We're going to preview Michigan State at the end. It's a little rough for them, too. With Indiana, though, you've got a team that clearly shows that they can play hard for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Will that continue? Time will tell. One thing that'll help is playing Jordan Geronimo more, and without question, keeping him in the starting lineup. And not only do I think they need to keep him in the starting lineup right now, I think they've got to keep him in the starting lineup even after Race Thompson comes back, because Geronimo has been a bundle of energy. He's the 5-hour energy shot. You know, you were talking about duct tape, and you were talking about glue guy with Race Thompson, Xavier Johnson. Well, in your toolbox, Jordan Geronimo's 5-hour energy. And look, you're not going to play him 35 minutes. But the one thing he does is he plays with reckless abandon from the first second he's on the court. And he did it against Penn State, and then Indiana took him out. You got to take him out. You can't play him 40 minutes. And Penn State went on their run. Against Wisconsin, not only did he play like a chicken with his head cut off, he also produced. He also had a double-double. And you're saying, well, hold on. I mean, look, you guys want to talk about experience with Race and Trace and Xavier Johnson and Miller Koppel. Jordan Geronimo's in his third year. How come he isn't thought of as a captain or as a leader or as a pillar that this team can lean on? He's shown that he can be that type of person over the last 2 games. So Indiana's got to keep Geronimo in the lineup, and they got to keep getting quality minutes out of him, because he does seem to be a little bit of a tone setter. Now, he can't guard Chris Murray. Not many people can. So again, in those type of matchups, you got to figure out the exact workload. But Geronimo, to me, I was very excited to see the type of basketball he played. Now, Matt, at the same time, right, Indiana's projected to finish this season 18-13, according to Ken Pom. That's 9-11 in Big Ten play. This defensive performance you saw on Saturday, how sustainable do you think that is? Do you think Indiana is more like that team that gave up 80 points a game against teams like Iowa and Northwestern and Penn State? Or are they closer to the team that held Wisconsin to 45?
They're much closer to the team that held Wisconsin to 45. And that's why it pissed IU fans off so much, because we've seen them play really good defense this year as a team, again, when they were fully healthy. But we've seen the team play much, much better defense. So you're sitting there so frustrated, because it's like, bro, like, we've seen you absolutely dog on some good teams and be in games that, like, yes, teams are scoring on you, but they're scoring fantastic. Like that Xavier game, they played great defense against Xavier. Yeah, Xavier ended up scoring a bunch of points because they were making tough shots. But like, again, it's like IU played against a shot-making North Carolina team and made them look like one of the worst teams in the country. Like, again, like IU has shown this year that they can do this. This team can play defense. So they're much closer to that team when fully healthy. And even now, they're much closer to that team. Like the effort they were giving in the last couple games was just unacceptable. And anybody with half a brain cell that has watched IU play was going to be like, hey, where is the team that was playing against Kennesaw State? Right? Like, again, like you didn't have to give effort for that game, but they gave more effort in that game than they did in the Penn State game by a lot. So again, it's one thing to be mad at the players and write them, mean messages when they're not playing well.
Don't do that.
But it's a total other thing to kind of point out when they're being lethargic. And I thought the fan base was correct in the fact that they look lethargic, they look like they couldn't take a punch in the mouth, they look soft, right? Like I think all those criticisms were absolutely fair and apt. Yeah. Until the Wisconsin game. They actually looked like a team that actually gave a
What
stuff.
what?
And so
Excuse me?
I want to keep the podcast PG.
It's a
PG.
bit, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna give us stuff, So again, I'm very proud of them for showing that. And now again, you said they need to, and I said that they need to continue to show this
Exactly.
against Illinois, who's a good opponent, by the way, and is getting better. And I'll explain why they're getting better here in a minute.
Yeah.
And then against Michigan State, who honestly is very, very Michigan State is actually one of IU's easiest games it has left on its schedule, in my opinion. At home, it's not just my opinion. I think Ken Palm has them as well as like the third easiest game. That was a fun fact I learned last night when we recorded the podcast for the first time. But again, like I just killed it.
It's fine. It's fine. It's all
but yeah. But anyways, like it's not only winnable, it's a must-win game. IU needs to go around 500 for these next couple weeks. Probably going to be about a month or so where IU's just going to have to win one, lose one, win one, lose one. Just
stay afloat.
Stay afloat. Keep your head around 500. And hopefully at the end of the day, IU ends up like 11-9 in the league, maybe 10-10.
If you get to 10-10, you're in the tournament.
Yeah, you get 10-10, you're clearly in the tournament. I think Indiana probably will make it anyways with a Big Ten tournament run if they even go 8-12, which is what I'm expecting to happen. But like again, like IU's gonna lose more games than they're gonna win down the stretch here, folks. Just because they're down people, and as long as they're showing effort, and as long as they are trying, and as long as they are throwing new things into the equation, the coaching staff is at least looking like they're trying to fix stuff. I'm fine with it. Okay, I'm fine. I'm annoyed. I'm mad that they're losing, but I'm not going to sit there and be like, why does Mike Woodson have a job? Like I was after the Penn State game, because honestly, that game was absolutely embarrassing. And I'm really glad that they came back and actually showed a bit of fight against a Wisconsin team that, again, was shorthanded, yes, but still a Wisconsin team that's had better showings against decent teams in the last two previous games. They had lost both of those, but they were both pretty decently close games, and IU just took them and took them to the woodshed. So again, IU being able to show that killer instinct was very promising. Now they have to be able to show that, a couple times down the stretch here this season. They're gonna have to pull out some games that they're not supposed to be winning. They're gonna have to claw and fight through some games in which they're shooting 1 of 8 from 3. So I want to see IU actually fight in these games, and if they can show a little bit of what they did against Wisconsin for every game now down the stretch, I feel like IU will end up around 10-10, maybe even 11-12-8 in the league. Like they can end up with a positive record here.
Yeah.
But they have the talent to do so. They just have to put out the effort, and not every time do they put out the effort are they going to succeed.
You're going to be in it. You're going to be in close games. And when you're in those close games, then you can rely on the free throw shooting of Miller Kopp to help put a game away. You can rely on the quality abilities of Trayce Jackson-Davis to help win you a close contest. But when you lose by double digits, what's the point? And there was a great comment made from the guys at Assembly Call during their post-game show on Sunday. And I thought about this over the course of the week. Trey Galloway in the first few minutes of that game on Saturday committed a foul. Shoot, darn, right? It's not great. But he committed a foul. He went over a screen, almost collided. He bumped into the Wisconsin screener, going over the top, I believe trying to guard Connor Essegian. And the ref said, hey, look, man, you're being a little too aggressive there. Personal foul on Trey Galloway. That's perfect. That's the exact kind of foul I want to see Indiana commit. I don't want to see fouls based on laziness or being late to a spot. Be early, be aggressive, be proactive. And if you do that, if you do that against Wisconsin, that's something you can carry forward here the rest of the way. Obviously, you don't want your guys to commit too many fouls, and Galloway was in foul trouble on Saturday, but be smart, be aggressive, be physical, dictate the tempo of the game. And Indiana did that on Saturday. It also helped that Trayce Jackson-Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino are really good. Obviously, Indiana's tandem, the Indiana superstars, Jalen Hood-Schifino, another double-digit performance. That's 7 in a row, 16 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Jackson Davis against Wisconsin, 18 points, 12 boards, 5 blocks. It looked like, Matt, real or not, Trace Jackson Davis maybe has a little more bounce in his step. It looks like that back is getting better.
Yeah, I think from the eye test,
I'm no
clearly,
doctor, but it looks
yeah,
like
he
some
was he
spring.
was pulling out some moves, Nathan, that I hadn't seen him pull out since the North Carolina game. Again, I think his footwork was fantastic. He was actually dunking the ball, which I thought was the weirdest thing because the last couple games is like, Trace is known for his dunks, and I'm like sitting there waiting for him to dunk the ball. He couldn't. There was no elevation, right? He couldn't get off the floor. He's like almost head at the rim dunking in the last game. So that's a really good sign for IU. That means he can kind of put up a fight now. On both ends of the court, because it was very clear that he just could not move in the last couple of games. So much so that people that weren't watching IU were like, "Hey, what's wrong with Trace?" And I was like, "Yeah,
He's
so
playing,
he's got
right?
he's playing, but he's got a back injury, guys. Like, So again, like it was very obvious, not just to IU fans, but to fans of other Big Ten teams that were watching. So it's good to have our senior best player back and healthy.
Please.
I'm sure
Thank
Wisconsin
goodness.
fans would love that to happen for them too. But sorry, not sorry. You can wait to do that until the Big Ten tournament. So look, IU needs to get healthy. I actually think it's low key kind of a blessing in disguise that Race and Xavier Johnson are going to be able to come back before the end of the season. Just because not only because they're going to be back, but they're also going to get some actual game minutes before the tournament, hopefully.
Yeah.
Right.
Hopefully,
so
right.
Again, like you're looking at they have a nice couple months off. They'll be fully healthy for the NCAA tournament. Like I don't know what 1 or 2 seed wants to see Indiana
You're right.
in their side of their
You're
bracket
right.
as an 8 or a 9 seed. Like I'm serious. Like this is again an IU team that had Final Four expectations. Has been completely and utterly banged up the entire year. You go and look. By the way, go and look at our ESPN game logs. It's like there's only 3 guys in the roster that have played every single game. There's only 3. There's only 3 on the entire roster. So IU's been absolutely plagued with injuries. But the good news is they are looking to be fully healthy by the time the most important part of the year comes around. So again, can the staff keep the team keep the season afloat long enough to get us to March? Because then I feel like this team, again, in neutral court environments against good teams, and when they're not getting shot out of the gym like they were against Arizona, they have a chance to actually do something great in March. But they got to get there first, right? So again, you got to go 500 or stay afloat for this next couple of weeks. And there's gonna be some ugly games, some games you don't want to watch.
Yep.
I've said this about 5 times in this podcast, but I really need to stress this. Stick with the team, like stick with it. Like it's gonna be annoying, it's gonna suck, it's gonna be some of the worst basketball you've ever watched. But hopefully, at the end of the day, they're going to pay us off with some really good, really amazing performances in March. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Indiana's going to play 2 games a week every week until the end of the regular season. And if you kind of break it up, like that, you kind of say, you do look at the schedule and you say, oh, Indiana could split each of the 5 weeks. It's not an unrealistic target. Actually, the January schedule a little bit easier than February. You can make some kind of argument that IU could win 4 out of their last 5 games in January. Again, we're just asking for this team to keep splitting your weeks. They did it last week. Can they keep that going? It would help if Jalen Hood-Schifino kept relying on that effective mid-range jump shot. I know, look, I'm an analytics guy as much as anyone, and I know the three-point shot is more ideal. But if Jalen Hood-Schifino is taking open mid-range jumpers off of picks, off of curls, then we're talking about a shot that I like, especially when
his 3-point shot's great too, by the way.
And hey, he can lean into that more, no question about it. I don't like when Jalen Hood-Schifino in transition early in the shot clock dribbles right into a contested 20-footer. That's bad news. But when we're talking about half court sets where you're setting good screens and you're freeing him up in the flow of the offense, and he's taking a 16-footer on the right side of the free throw line. Now we're talking about something I can believe in, especially as we've talked about before, when Indiana faces a 10-0 run or a 12-2 run, and you're looking for something that can get you right back into the game to stop the bleeding. Well, maybe the most reliable piece of this offense right now is Trace Jackson Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino in the pick and roll. Trace Jackson Davis attacking downhill, or Jalen Hood-Schifino hitting that mid-range jumper. If you're really looking for some things that you can say some are somewhat guaranteed as far as this offense is concerned. What's not guaranteed is the performance of Tamar Bates and Miller Kopp. I mean, in the start of the season, we're saying these two guys are wild cards. In the stretch after Indiana beat Xavier, North Carolina, we're saying, whoa, hey, all of a sudden, look, these two guys are potentially going to make Indiana a Final Four team. And then the last 4 games, you're saying, what the heck is going on? Now, Matt, help me rationalize what's going on with Tamar Bates and Miller Kopp. Are they afterthoughts in this offense right now? Because they're not giving you they're not giving you that much production given these last few games.
I don't think they are. I think offensively they've been fine. It's defensively their liabilities for different reasons. Miller Kopp is a liability because he's just not focused, and Tamar tries too hard, and is a bit disorganized on the defensive end. So clearly you have one dude that just just ain't all there, and you have another in Miller Kopp, and you have another dude who tries his hardest, but is just not a great defender right now, and that's in Tamar Bates, and so you can't play both of them, right? And especially in games in which you're chasing 3-pointers around, it's like, oh my god, if I have to watch Tamar try to keep track of a 3-pointer, it's like watching a chicken run without his head attached. Like it's just, he's all over the place. He's shaky legged. He can't keep a guy in front of him. It's atrocious. And IU needs good defenders out there. That's why Trey Galloway's out there. He's not the world's best defender by any means, but he
deserves to be on the floor. There's no debating it,
because there's nobody else that plays defense at any level comparable to what he does, even though it's not fantastic. Again, like, I think it's something that IU needs to check out in the portal for next year is some wing defenders, because they don't have anybody that's a go-to wing defender when Ray Thompson's not there. Jordan Dorano's not that guy. You saw him get absolutely mauled by Chris Murray. They need somebody. I tweeted this and got ratioed by Justin Smith. God bless his soul. But I tweeted, like, I can't believe this team is making me miss Justin Smith. And Justin Smith said, I miss you too. Thank you, Justin. Like, yeah, it was a bit of a backhanded compliment, but it's actually like, I legitimately made it. Like, I miss a wing defender that was just gonna take their best guy out of the game. And IU doesn't have that on this roster, right? And that's kind of a staple of NBA teams, right? If you look, again, Woodson's got an NBA background. NBA teams have guys that just take other guys out of the equation, right? Like, they have enforcers, right? They have guys they bring in. You think of PJ Tucker's maybe a guy you might think of.
Sure.
You think of Draymond Green, guys that wing defenders that can guard every position on the floor and take somebody out of the game. IU hasn't had that on the roster.
Don't forget, the guy who's absolutely crushing it in the NBA right now, OG Anunoby, right? Maybe not the most, flagrant 2 type of player, but he's doing exactly what you would like someone on this team to do, and Indiana can't find her right now.
Right, yeah, they just don't have it, right? You don't have a go-to defender on this team when Race Thompson's out. And even when Race Thompson's in, he's not exactly the go-to perimeter defender for wings. So, again, you're kind of sitting here looking for answers to a problem that doesn't have an answer. And that's what kind of scares me about the Illinois game, is that Illinois has some fantastic wings. You have Terrence Shannon Jr., and you've got Matthew Mayer, and then you have Coleman Hawkins. All these guys are from 6'6" to 6'10" and can do like everything on the court that you ask them to do. And IU doesn't really have anybody that can defend that. So at the end of the day, it's like IU's trying to come up Yeah, like I said, with answers that you don't, there's no answer for. So I'm kind of sitting here questioning whether IU can beat Illinois. I don't think they can. We'll talk about that in a minute. But they can take advantage of some of Illinois' weaknesses, right, Nithin? Like,
They
I think
can.
Illinois doesn't have a point guard. They're starting a freshman point guard that probably shouldn't really be starting at this point in time. You're starting, a big and Danger who
Yeah.
has a very slow foot speed, and you see those guys do against Trace. You kind of saw it this weekend with
Yeah.
Corral, like it got absolutely abused. So
Take
I,
advantage.
there are opportunities for this IU to take advantage against Illinois. I think it'll be a closer game than a lot of people think. I don't know if they have the answer defensively against Illinois. And we can get into that into a second.
Yeah, we got detailed previews coming up. I will say, as far as I'm concerned, Tamar Bates is not an afterthought. I'm willing to give him chances. I'm willing to have him on the floor. I like my shooters to shoot the basketball, which is why at the same time, I'm kind of done with Miller Kopp. I'm kind of done with it.
Yeah, I've sold my Miller Kopp.
I'm kind of done. Look, and I understand, right? In principle, he's a critical piece to this team.
He's
His
still going to
skills,
play though.
his strengths would really help this basketball team. But frankly, I think Miller Kopp is one step above the Evan Fitzner disaster here from a few years ago.
Oh, that's
when
so
I sit here and I look at this, I'm talking about someone who was such a critical piece to this team. I was there at Jersey Mike's Arena in Rutgers, seeing him drain jump shot after jump shot after jump shot after jump shot. And now one team adjusts and that's it. He's back to taking less than 3 shots a game. He's not taking more than 3 shots a game during this Indiana losing streak. Xavier Johnson gets injured. Race Thompson gets injured. And you need your senior to step up. And he's not actively seeking out the shots that Indiana desperately needs him to seek. And as far as I'm concerned, give his minutes to Trey Galloway or Jordan Geronimo or Malik Renew or Tamar Bates. Give me minutes for guys that are taking the bull by the horns. Just because someone defends you doesn't mean that's the end of the world. Indiana's trying to defend the 3-point shooters on Penn State or on Iowa, but those shooters are creating opportunities to get open. 3 shots per game is a waste of time for someone who is so hampered on the defensive end. He was not guarding anybody against Penn State. And if that's not happening and he's not taking shots, I can't have him take 30 minutes a game. And we're going to talk about some interesting wild cards Mike Woodson can pull for the Illinois matchup. I even think Caleb Banks deserves time in that game over Miller Kopp. What's the point of Kopp, Matt, if he's not shooting the 3?
True. Look, Miller Kopp is such a weird problem, honestly, because it's like even when he's not playing well, he's a factor because he has gravity. I think I talked about this last night. Like, gravity is when a player needs to attract attention because of the gifts he has. So, for instance, Trace has gravity, right? He allows our 3-point shooters to get open looks because he's such a dominant presence in the lane, right? You can't get him out of the lane. You can't do anything with him, right? And he's going to take your guy one-on-one and destroy him, right? So you have to allocate your defense to defending Trace. So it gets the shooters open. Then you add in the fact that you have somebody like Miller Kopp, who, if you leave open, is 50% 3-point shooter, right? Statistically. So again, you're sitting there, you're like, wow, do I take the 50% 3-point shooter or do I take Trace Jackson Davis? Like, offensively, he works. It's just that defensively, he's an absolute liability. Now, at the beginning of the year, that was not the case.
It was not. You're absolutely right.
It was not the case.
It was not.
At the beginning of the year. Beginning of the year, I was like, wow, I'm pleasantly surprised. I shouldn't have said this, obviously, at the beginning of the year because I jinxed something.
Major jinx, yeah.
But literally, I was like, Miller Kopp's like, he's showing me some things on defense. Like, he's trying. Not anymore. There are fan cams of Miller Kopp literally sitting there staring at nothing during the Penn State game while this guy takes a backdoor cut, goes baseline, goes all the way around, takes an open 3-point shooter on the side. He's still standing there staring. I hope into the student sections checking out a girl or something. I don't know what he's doing, right? But he's looking.
That would explain it. At least there would be some reasoning.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. At least he would be distracted, right? Poor guy would be distracted. There was no reason for him to do what he did in that game multiple times. So again,
Well, it was
IU,
Iowa Northwestern too, though, and I guess that's what I'm saying. Like,
it was
if
multiple games in a row. He's been terrible on defense. He's been absolutely shambolic.
in your toughest moments, if he can't help you out, I want to let someone else have that
And
chance. And
that's
I'm not saying like bench him for the entirety of the game. Stop putting him in the starting lineup. Bring him in off the bench. Maybe that helps limit his minutes, give him 10, 12, 15, because I understand the spatial concept. I get it. There's, you got to manage the space on the basketball floor. But Penn State gave Indiana no space on the basketball floor when Miller Kopp was on the court. Okay, so I want to see Tamar Bates get that opportunity. I want to see CJ Gunn get that opportunity. I want to see Logan Duncombe in that little minute. I didn't expect him to play against Wisconsin, but he saw the court in the first half against Wisconsin. I just don't see how after 50 games things will change now.
so he has a bit of gravity. He attracts defensive attention. So I think there's a way that you treat him that shows, hey, this is not a game, right? Well, I mean, it is a game. It's basketball, but like we're not playing here, right? Like you're gonna if you want to play, if you want playing time, you're gonna have to show me that you deserve the playing time, right? And so what I mean by that is he's gonna have to um go and probably sit for the first 4 minutes of every game. Like I think he probably should be starting anymore. I think the staff will probably get that. Because again, you have guys like Tamar Bates you can bring in place of him that kind of get the same gravity he does, right? As shooters, right?
Right.
So you sit him for the first 4 minutes, you bring him in at the under 16 and go, hey, these next 4 minutes, show me why you deserve to play this game. If you don't show me how you deserve to play the game, you're sitting the rest of the game. It's a lot of pressure to put on a player, but I think for him, especially being a senior, he should welcome that. Because that's his opportunity to go out there and get more shots during the next 4 minutes. Don't be afraid to shoot the ball. Go and actually play your offensive game, and hopefully they run some sets from in those 4 minutes. And if he's feeling it, right, then you play him the rest of the game, and IU's offense becomes even more dynamic. And if he's not feeling it, and he's not playing well, and he's giving up defensive possessions, free defensive possessions, then guess what? Boom, you don't have to play him anymore, right? He's done for the rest of the game. You don't have to play him anymore. He knows the consequences. He knows what happens. You know why he's not playing, right? And I think that kind of communication, that is how you kind of get a player to really understand, hey, not only are you underperforming, but you're just downright playing unacceptable basketball for somebody who we expect to be a leader and an on-court leader on this team. Like, we need you to be much better than what you are right now. And that's a way to convey the message without completely taking them out of the rotation for the rest of the year.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll see how Mike Woodson deals with this in this upcoming stretch of games. We asked all of you on our weekly podcast poll. The fact is, Indiana played with intensity and physicality in Saturday's blowout over Wisconsin. Does that continue this week? Well, 53%, just 53%.
Only 53?
Said, yes, I trust IU to return to that level of intensity in this upcoming game against Illinois on Thursday and Michigan State on Sunday. 47% of you said no, it's a one-game blip. A lot of really good comments in here. Jason said he needs a string of games with that level of intensity before he says he can trust Indiana. How about this comment from Michael, who said, IU doesn't need bandwagon jumpers. This team just needs to adjust without X and race. Things will be fine from here. Cabby from Green says it's a grind, winning just enough to get to, winning just enough until you can get X and race back. Doug Brown says, I want to trust, but I'm skeptical. Jesse says, well, they played really hard and intense against North Carolina and never really had it again until the Wisconsin game. And Y Sarge says, yeah, I think it can. So mixed opinions. Interesting to see. 53-47 right down the middle. Well, this team has a chance to prove their fans who believe in them right starting Thursday night against Illinois. First, though, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. So we're going to tip our cap to Israel native and IU women's basketball freshman Yarden Garzone, who had an outstanding game over the course of the last week. In fact, an outstanding 2 games He had 11 points and 6 rebounds in IU's top 10 win over Maryland. Somehow, IU stayed at number 6 after that. I don't have a vote. I just have a critical opinion of that decision. Meanwhile, Garzone also put up 19 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists against the Wisconsin Badgers at Assembly Hall last week. IU won both games. Garzone was Big Ten Freshman of the Week and also the Tamika Catchings National Freshman of the Week. The Hoosiers now on Wednesday night head to number 24 Illinois to play the Fighting Illini in Champaign before the men do that on Thursday night. Also, the Hoosiers have 2 huge games next week against Michigan and Ohio State. Indiana's been battle tested all year, and they're going to add to that next season as they continue their march to a potential national championship. Folks, if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for The Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at The Hoosier Sound. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. But here we go, folks. Thursday night, it's right around the corner. Indiana at Illinois. 2 unranked teams will do battle at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on FS1 at not Assembly Hall, but the State Farm Center. I'd like to make sure everyone understands that building is now called the State Farm Center. With Jason Benetti and Stephen Bardo on the call. Yeah, we're going to put an Illinois alum analyst on this game. Fine, whatever. Illinois unranked in the AP poll, as we mentioned, but 21st in the KenPom ratings, 39th offense, 23rd defense. They play fast. They're on a 4-game win streak, all of which have come after Sky Clark was dismissed. Well, we'll say Sky Clark took a personal absence from the Illinois program. Indiana is 0-3 in Big Ten road games, all of which have been traumatic experiences. Matt, KenPom is Illinois winning this game by 5 points. Who are the key players you're looking out for in this contest? What are some of the key matchups, and what does Indiana have to do to come away with the win?
Illinois is a 3-headed monster. Now they were supposed to be this fantastically deep team. Like for the year, you're talking about RJ Melendez is possibly breakout candidate of the year. Like they're. I had Illinois fans in my mentions telling me that every single one of their players is going to be a Big Ten first teamer. Obviously that's not the case. They do have some fantastic players though. And their big 3 is this. They have, I mentioned them before. They have Terrence Shannon Jr., Matthew Mayer, and
Coleman Hawkins,
Coleman
Dane
Hawkins. Coleman Hawkins. Dane Danger is a points getter and a rebound getter for them. But I wouldn't say he's not the focus of the team. He's the focus of the offense. Again, most of their sets, most of their stuff is ran through their wings, and they're do everything 6'10" forward in Coleman Hawkins. So they're a very interesting team. They don't have a point guard. They do have a point guard, but they're freshmen, right? There's Sincere Harris and they have
Jaden
Epps,
yeah,
who are both freshmen. So they're relying on freshmen for point guard play, which sounds familiar, doesn't it, guys?
But it's also not Jalen Hood-Schifino, right?
They're not even close to Jalen Hood-Schifino. Okay, they're not in the same level. They're good. They're especially good for freshmen, and they've done a very good job over the last couple of games for Illinois. But they're not world beaters by any means. Indiana has to win this game by taking Matthew Mayer out of the game. He can't get easy jump shots. Terrence Shannon Jr. is going to get his. I don't think there's really anybody on this IU team that can kind of stay in front of him, and IU's just going to have to deal with that. And Coleman Hawkins, if he's on that night and he's shooting well, I think Illinois is particularly unbeatable. If he's not shooting well, which has been quite the case recently, they are definitely beatable. Like the Northwestern game they lost, among other games. This Illinois team is supposed to be very good. They have the highest ceiling, in my opinion, of all the Big Ten teams. It's just that they don't all fit together because they're missing that one guy that kind of puts them all together. It was supposed to be RJ Melendez. It was supposed to be Sky Clark. It was supposed to be insert name of whoever on their bench was supposed to break out this year. They haven't done that. Brad Underwood has gone in on his team multiple times this year. just laying into them.
It's been crazy.
Their effort. It's been a little bit of a dramatic ride for them, but I do think they're starting to put things together now. They've shown some consistent performances the last couple games. They went on a losing streak like Indiana did, and then they've been on a winning streak for the last couple games. Hopefully, IU can learn something from them and start their own winning streak now after beating Wisconsin. But who knows? But again, I do think this is a tough ask for Indiana to go into the State Farm Center, not Assembly Hall anymore. They got rid of that name because they knew they were ripping off the
Sold
original
out.
ones. No, they didn't sold out. They gave up the fight. And it's just gonna be too much for them. I think Illinois has too much talent. I think Illinois will end up winning this game. I just hope that Indiana can show the same amount of effort they did against Wisconsin,
That's it.
and keep it close. Because if they can do that, I'm fine with losing to this Illinois team, especially since it's in Illinois and IU is down 2 people and Illinois is at full strength. So again, IU just needs to stay afloat. I don't think this is one of those games that can help them stay afloat. I do think the Michigan State game is one of those games, and we're going to get into that in a minute when we get to Michigan State.
I mean, the thing is, the last part of what you said is, I mean, you obviously know what you're talking about with the Illinois program, their roster, their rotation. You watch every Big Ten team. I know you do. But that last part, as far as it doesn't matter if Indiana wins or loses, guys. It really doesn't. You have to bring that same 40-minute effort that you brought against Wisconsin. That is going to determine how the rest of the season goes, not the final score. If Indiana does not show up and play for 40 minutes, there will be a long losing streak that follows this game. There will. If you show 40 minutes of effort and desperation and playing like your hair is on fire like you did against Wisconsin, now we can start talking about resurrecting this team in the back half of this stretch run here, end of January into February and March. Play with that desperation. Play like your season is on the line. Play as if that Wisconsin game almost didn't happen. Play as if you just got your ass kicked by Penn State last week and you hadn't had a single game in that stretch since until Thursday night. Because if you play with that level of anger and frustration and take it out on Illinois, you have a chance. KenPom has Illinois as a 5-point favorite. The sports books have Illinois as a 7-point favorite. This is not asking Indiana to go to Allen Fieldhouse and beat Kansas. This is asking Indiana to show up and play competitive, tough basketball and keep it interesting at the end. Because one of the advantages Indiana might have is at the free throw line, where if this game is a 2 or a 3 or a 4-point game, Illinois is shooting 67% from the line this season.
They're like an Archie Miller free throw shooting game.
It's too soon, man. Hot, cold sweats, flashback. Look, they don't make threes. They don't make free throws. They take a lot of threes. They take a lot of free throws. But the fact of the matter is they can have difficulties putting the ball in the basket. So if you do the stuff you're supposed to do, you might give your team a chance at the end of this game and an opportunity to pull off your second quad 1 road win, which would go miles in helping your cause on Selection Sunday, because not many teams will have 2 quality quad 1 road wins on their ledger when you're comparing all the teams on the bubble. You do see Jalen Hood-Schifino having that matchup in the point guard position. You do see Trace Jackson-Davis having that matchup in the post position, by the way, as the 5 position. However, I don't want to see Indiana back Trace Jackson-Davis down onto Dane Danger.
That's Dane Danger's strength.
He's a big man. He's 6'10", he's girthy, he's lumbering. He won't allow you to back him down. He's going to contest all your 10, 8, 6-foot jump hooks. You have to get Trace Jackson-Davis attacking downhill, out of the pick and roll, almost as a point center if you want to even do it that way. Allow him to use that athleticism. You can find out very quickly on Thursday night if Indiana has a chance. Are they playing hard, and is Trace Jackson-Davis attacking danger from different angles? I don't know if it's that simple, Matt, but that's how I look at this game. Who do you think wins on Thursday night, and by how much?
I said Illinois. I'm going to stick by that. I still think Illinois wins this. I think it's going to be like 70-65. I don't think you can keep them under 70 points in their home court. And I think, again, IU's defense is not going to be able to really stop their wings. But I do think offensively, IU can score them. They're just gonna have to take care of the ball because again, they do like to press the ball, but that's
Yeah.
is a staple of Brad Underwood's defensive philosophy. So again, you're gonna need Jalen Hood-Schifino to take care of the ball. I do think it'll be close. I think this IU team, healthy, probably wins this game and wins this game by a lot, especially since I think Xavier Johnson probably would have been huge for IU, and it would have shown the discrepancy of why IU was kind of favored over Illinois at the beginning of the year, just because they have more secure point guard play. But I think it'll be a decent outcome for IU anyways, just to lose by single digits to an Illinois team that's on the come up.
Meanwhile, unfortunately, I am not as convinced that Indiana will play with that same edge that they played with against Wisconsin. I need to see it to believe it. I need to see Indiana give up a 10-2 run or a 12-4 run and hit back, and then give up a run and then hit back, and then give up a run and then hit back. Because if you watched Illinois, that's how they play. Go watch them. I watched every minute of that game against Michigan State back on Friday night. It was back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. That's the kind of basketball that they play. Now, they do have some crazy results on their ledger, and you can get into their heads. But I don't know if Indiana is going to be the team to do that. I have IU losing this game 75-64. Now, I will say one joker that Mike Woodson could deploy, as I mentioned a few moments ago, is Caleb Banks. I really think Caleb Banks matches up well against some of these guys that Illinois has to offer, like Hawkins, like Shannon, like Meyer, Matthew Mayer. I could see Caleb Banks not playing 30 minutes, not 30, okay, 8, 10, just to give Illinois something unexpected to look at on Thursday night. And that could be a little move that sparks Indiana to an upset win. Against the sports books have Illinois as a 7-point favorite, the over under their 146.5. But we'll see how it goes Thursday night. Can't wait to see IU take on the Fighting Illini in Champaign. We're going to talk about Indiana hosting Michigan State on Sunday. But first, it's time for a social media shout out, and we would be remiss if we did not tip our cap to Indiana football's newest commit. That is Taven Jackson, the transfer from University of Tennessee, a Center Grove High School alum and the brother of Trace Jackson Davis, who was a 4-star high school quarterback recruit, a dual threat who transferred after one season with the Vols, and after one nice afternoon sitting with and spending time with Tom Allen and Walt Bell, Taven Jackson said, Indiana's the program for me. Jackson is going to come in, and we'll see what happens with Dexter Williams. Tom Allen made it very clear as Indiana's season was winding down last year that he would go to an offense with a mobile quarterback. Taven Jackson offers exactly that. He wasn't going to get automatic playing time with the Volunteers. Now he's got a chance at exactly that with Indiana in this upcoming season. I don't know if this is ambitious, man. I'll just put you on the spot right now. Opening night against Ohio State in August or early September. Is Taven Jackson your starting quarterback?
Yes, I mean, clearly. And I think especially so if Dexter Williams is still injured. I think there should be a healthy QB competition when he comes back, because I thought he was very promising down the stretch last year. I just the thing with me and IU football is this: how is the offensive line play going to be? Because IU really hasn't gotten a ton of transfers in.
More cold sweats
on the offensive line. They didn't really lose anybody from the offensive line.
Luke Hackard's gone. That's a big loss. He's the one guy you could rely on.
Sorry. They lost Luke. Basically, they haven't really gotten anybody in to replace anybody in the offensive line. The offensive line stunk last year anyways, which terrifies me. Now, the good news is there's still a ton of people entering the transfer portal, including I saw 2 former 5-star offensive tackles today alone in the transfer portal announcing. So hopefully in the next couple weeks or month or so, IU get some good news on the offensive line front, because they need some guys, right? They just need some bodies in there. You look at the defensive lines they're going to be going up against next year in the Big Ten, and it's like, oh my God, please.
Well, never mind Louisville, who's also on the non-conference schedule, at least as of today.
Well, if they are still on the conference schedule,
we can.
By the time we are playing them,
we can mention Max Longman, who comes in from UMass after starting a few years there. Look at Josh Sales and Khalil Benson, who got some time at the end of last season. Carter Smith, Bray Lynch, a couple of youngsters you can pay some attention to. We'll see who the starting five is when Indiana takes the field against the Buckeyes on opening night. You can find Taven Jackson on Instagram at taven.jackson. That's Tayven. You can find him on Twitter at Taven Jackson 2, and that is Jackson with 2 N's and the number 2. So that's where you can find Indiana's potential starting quarterback going into this upcoming season. I will say, Tom Allen does deserve a salute for revamping the trenches,
for getting him in,
landing Taven Jackson at quarterback. A couple of nice wide receiver additions. Again, you got to get results on the field, but perhaps it is not quite as doom and gloom as we originally thought. This is the time to be optimistic, folks. Let's see what Indiana can do here as far as the 2023 season is concerned. Quick mention of our socials. You can find us at Indiana HQ and the Hoosier Sound on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Matt, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ. There's a period dot in there.
Gotta find us there. All right. Michigan State comes to town on Sunday, and this Spartans team is a bit like the Wisconsin team that Indiana just played, as far as there is one key injury that looks like will affect the Spartans for this contest on Sunday. It's going to tip off at noon on CBS at Assembly Hall, and Malik Hall is the key player that looks like he's going to be out for this game. Tom Izzo very pessimistic about his availability. May have even been a report that he is out for the season. The Spartans are 12-6, 4-3 in Big Ten play. However, without Malik Hall, at least at full strength, they are coming off of back-to-back losses at Illinois as well as at home versus Purdue. It was a nail biter against Purdue. Tyson Walker went off, but at the end of the day, Spartans did drop that one to the Boilermakers. MSU does play Rutgers on Thursday if you're interested. It's the game before Indiana plays Illinois on Thursday night. The Spartans are 40th in KenPom. Again, it's a little bit skewed because Malik Hall has been available for some of those games. 64th on offense, 37th on defense. They do play very slowly. Matt, Indiana is projected to win this game for KenPom, and it is supposed to be one of Indiana's easiest games the rest of the way. What are you paying attention to in this matchup on Sunday afternoon?
So if you haven't watched Michigan State at all this year, because, well, you just haven't, right? I would say this is Michigan State. They have a excellent senior transfer point guard, Tyson Walker. They have AJ Hoggard, who's a lot like Jalen Pickett, which should terrify some people. Again, another big point guard, ball dominant guard that likes to get into the post. And then they have Joey Hauser, who's like the more productive, more consistent version of Miller Kopp. Slightly taller, too. The problem is, for Michigan State, is that they do not have a go-to wing scorer on this team, like an ISO guy. And every time a team needs a guy that can do that, they don't have that when Malik Hall is injured. Malik Hall is injured. He might be missing the rest of the season. We don't know. It's kind of TBD. But that's kind of the whispers that I'm hearing from Michigan State folks, is that he's going to be out for a while with a foot injury that he already had suffered this year and been out multiple games with. It's not great news for Michigan State. So again, IU can take advantage of, I believe, not having to defend a wing this game, which is good news for IU. They don't have to defend Malik Hall. I think Matt Sissoko. I was just looking on Twitter at All America list, and I saw
Sanogo
UConn Sissoko.
UConn,
yeah, and I meant Sissoko. Matty Sissoko will pose problems for Trace, because again, he's one of those guys that Trace struggles against, just dudes that are just as athletic as him, right? And Sissoko's a freak, but he's also their most inconsistent player, in my opinion, because he goes from being an all-worldy like kind of center, like with NBA upside and potential, and you see all this stuff, to possibly being their worst player on the court within 5 minutes of each other. It's crazy. This team is extremely inconsistent. For instance, I brought up Tyson Walker to begin with, their point guard. He's also extremely inconsistent. One half will have 28 and the next half will have 2 shots. Jaden Aiken will have 14 points one game and 2 points the next game. It's just all over the place for Michigan State. And their most consistent guy is Joey Hauser, who is also just slightly inconsistent himself. And that's not, that's really says a lot about the team. Again, their most consistent guy is Joey Hauser, who has been absolutely blitzed by Michigan State fans at times for just being kind of what we get on Miller Kopp for,
Yeah.
being lazy on defense, being cumbersome, not taking dumb shots, not taking enough shots. It's like Joey can do no right, just like Miller Kopp can do no right at this point. And it's funny to say that he's like one of their top leading scorers for this team. It's a team that there was a very different dynamic when McCall's in there because he's a bit of a threat from the perimeter, from the wing position. And that's not really the case anymore. I mean, you have to guard Joey Hauser, but if Joey Hauser starts taking dribbles, you're like, I'm fine with this. And it's like the same way you guard Miller Kopp. So I like this matchup for IU again because there's not a wing player that's going to absolutely rip through IU's team. They don't need to worry about that. IU's athleticism with Trace and Renew is going to be huge because when Sissoko goes off the court for Michigan State, it is bad. Jackson Kohler, their freshman, and Carson Cooper just aren't even in the same conversation as Malik Renew as far as players go. So if IU can kind of get Sissoko into foul trouble, you feed Trace, you get some decent jump shooting from your wings, you should be able to win this game. My interesting thing for IU though is as far as defensive matchups goes, who guards AJ Hoggard? Yep. Because again, he's kind of like Jalen Pickett. We didn't have an answer for Jalen Pickett. I don't think IU is really going to have an answer for AJ Hoggard. But the good news is that AJ Hoggard is also inconsistent. So he's not a jump shooter. You kind of live with him taking pull up 3-pointers. If he's taking contested, hook shots in and around the rim with either Trace getting switched on him or whatever, like I think you live with that as well. If you're IU, there's a lot of different things that IU can do this game to kind of make Michigan State uncomfortable, and I don't think there's a lot of things that Michigan State can do to make IU uncomfortable, and that's why I'm more confident that IU will win this game. And you add the fact that it is at home at Assembly Hall and probably be a raucous environment, given how last game was. So I fully expect Indiana to win this game. I think it'll probably end up being 65-60. Will probably end up being the final score there.
Looking forward to seeing this game play out. It's interesting. Illinois, Michigan State, two very different teams. Illinois fast, in your face. Obviously, they're healthy and they're on a winning streak. Michigan State, slow tempo, better 3-point shooting team, but they are coming off back-to-back losses. It's interesting. I think against Illinois, Indiana should deploy a zone frequently now that they've done it in a couple games. Meanwhile, against Michigan State, I think it's got to be all man-to-man. If you can't guard Michigan State man-to-man, I'm not really sure what we're doing here. They will beat you out of the zone. You talked about Walker and Hoggard. Walker went for 30 against Purdue. I'm looking forward to seeing Jalen Hood-Schifino and Trey Galloway, as well as Tamar Bates and spurts, take on the defensive responsibility and build off of what they put together against Wisconsin on that side of the floor. Seeing Hood-Schifino and Galloway really set that level, I'm looking forward to seeing IU do that, give that crowd a immediate burst of energy right out of the start, because as you mentioned, Matt, it was absolutely fantastic to see the students back in action on Saturday against Wisconsin. I will say, I see this game as one where potentially Tamar Bates, if he hasn't been able to get it back on track against Illinois, he could potentially do so against Michigan State. I'm looking to see him hit a few jump shots and, of course, get that action, get that activity out of Jackson Davis and Geronimo inside. And overall, I want to see Indiana just defend these guys. Man-to-man, let's go. Don't let up. And potentially, Indiana could be sitting on 2 wins this week. It's not out of the question. I do think IU wins this game, and I do think Indiana takes it by a score of something like 74-66. I do think Indiana takes care of business. At the end of the day, though, it is Tom Izzo, and it's a Michigan State team that could potentially be in a more win or, a more do or die situation than Indiana could be, as crazy as that sounds. So keep that in mind as you watch that game on Sunday at noon on CBS. Ken Pom has IU winning 72-68. Looking forward to seeing it all play out. Matt, we dissected a lot on this show tonight. Indiana's men's basketball team, Indiana's women's basketball team, Indiana's football program, all sorts of craziness going on. Indiana's got 2 shots this week. What are your closing thoughts as we wrap up on this Wednesday night?
Closing thoughts are this. IU, again, it's about 9 times this podcast, but I'm dead serious, but needs to stay afloat in the Big Ten.
Keep splitting.
Just keep swimming. Just need to stay afloat, and then their life vests will be thrown to them when X and race can come back. The women's team is fantastic. If you haven't watched the women's team, I think they're playing right now on Big Ten Plus.
Yep, in about an hour.
Sorry, it's 8 p.m. tip. They're playing on Big Ten Plus. Go watch them. If you don't have a Big Ten Plus account, one, I'm sure somebody's streaming it somewhere. And two,
just get one.
We should write nasty letters to Big Ten about putting games on Big Ten Plus. Like, why is the number 6 overall women's basketball team in the country playing on Big Ten Plus? It's stupid. And then finally, football. There's some awesome news for football. I thought Taven Jackson was great. I thought the more important, not more important, but the most recent news was that Indiana got a recruiting director from Auburn to become their GM for the program today. And he was like one of the 24/7s, like under 30 guys, and was like a top 15 recruiter last year. That's really good. I thought, again, I've seen IU get people though in the past. Delaney McCullough. I've seen them get, Coach Wright, who's the tight end coach right now. And I thought that they were going to be huge recruiting booms. Haven't really happened. Nothing's really happened with that. So again, can this guy kind of turn the tide? I forget his name. You can look it up though. It's all over the place. You should look up Indiana football GM. Well, when you look up Indiana football GM, you probably get the Colts, but either way. If you look up IU football GM, his name will come up. But if he can start actually bringing in some people and getting maybe it starts with the transfer portal, that would be awesome. Because again, I think IU's legitimately 3 or 4 pieces away, 2 offensive linemen, maybe a defensive lineman, and like a linebacker away from legitimately having like a 6-6 team, maybe even a 7-5 team next year. Without those pieces, I think they're like a 4 or 5 win team. And it's like, go get, if you are 4 people away from having a winning football team and starting a winning culture back at IU again, like you have to do everything in your power to get them. So I'm interested to kind of see what direction the staff takes in order to, improve this team that desperately needs improving after the last 2 years' performances.
Desperately, yeah. And we retweeted the news over on Indiana HQ. You can find all the details there. For me, switching back to the men's college basketball side, let's face it, there is more parity than ever. I totally agree with John Rothstein's comment. It is a level playing field. I don't think there's a clear-cut good team, great team in college basketball.
Nope.
In men's game specifically. I absolutely think there is this is another tournament where you can see a first 4 team like UCLA a couple years ago make the Final Four, or a 8-9 seed like UNC did last year make the national championship game. It's perfectly in the cards. There is not a single team I'm nervous about. Kentucky, as bad as they looked, went to Tennessee and won. Arizona, who look like world beaters, can't play defense worth a lick. So, look, Indiana has a lot to play for here. Play hard, compete, keep getting better, and don't ever rekindle those memories from the nightmare at Penn State from last Wednesday.
Yeah,
now,
please
folks,
don't.
That about wraps it up for our 279 show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love. Go Hoosiers.